The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty courtyard of the Blackwood estate as Maya Singh stepped out of the unmarked van. Her hands were bound behind her back, and dried blood caked the corner of her mouth from the beating she had received during transport. The three men who had kidnapped her from her small veterinary clinic in Mumbai pushed her forward roughly, their expensive suits contrasting sharply with their crude behavior. Marcus Blackwood emerged from the sprawling mansion, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. He was known throughout the region as a wealthy businessman who collected exotic animals for his private zoo. What the authorities did not know was that he also ran an underground fighting ring where wealthy spectators paid enormous sums to watch savage battles between wild animals and unfortunate victims. "So this is the famous Dr. Maya Singh," Marcus said, circling around her like a predator studying prey. "The woman who thinks she can expose my operations to the wildlife protection agencies." His voice carried the cold authority of someone accustomed to having people disappear when they became inconvenient. Maya kept her chin raised despite her fear. For months, she had been investigating reports of missing tigers and leopards from local reserves. Her research had led her to discover that Blackwood was not only illegally capturing protected species, but forcing them to fight in brutal spectacles for entertainment. She had gathered evidence and was preparing to present it to international wildlife authorities when his men had grabbed her from her clinic 3 days ago. "You have no idea what you have gotten yourself into, Doctor," Marcus continued. "Your investigation ends here, along with your life. But first, you will serve as entertainment for my guests who have traveled from around the world to witness something special." He gestured toward a fortified compound behind the main house where the sounds of restless animals could be heard. Maya had treated enough traumatized animals to recognize the stress calls echoing from that direction. Her heart sank as she realized these creatures were being kept in terrible conditions, likely starved, and tormented to increase their aggression for the fights. "The irony is perfect," Marcus laughed coldly. "A veterinarian who spent her life protecting animals will be torn apart by the very creatures she tried to save. My guests will appreciate the poetic justice." What Marcus and his associates did not realize was that Maya possessed an extraordinary ability that she had kept hidden her entire life. Since childhood, she had been able to communicate with animals through a combination of subtle body language, vocal tones, and what she could only describe as an empathic connection. This gift had made her an exceptional veterinarian, but she had learned early to keep it secret after witnessing how people reacted with fear and suspicion to anything they could not understand. As they dragged her toward the fighting compound, Maya began to focus her mind in the way her grandmother had taught her years ago. The elderly woman had possessed the same ability and had warned Maya that it would someday either save her life or put it in terrible danger. Today, it seemed, both predictions would prove true. The compound contained a large circular arena surrounded by tiered seating where about 50 wealthy spectators were already gathering. Maya could see several holding thick stacks of money, placing bets on how long she would survive against whatever creatures they planned to release. Their faces showed the bored cruelty of people who had experienced every luxury life could offer and now sought increasingly extreme entertainment. In the holding areas around the arena, Maya could sense the presence of multiple large predators. Her heart broke as she felt their pain, hunger, and confusion. These were not naturally aggressive animals, but creatures driven to desperation by abuse and starvation. They had been conditioned to attack anything placed in the arena with them, not out of natural instinct, but as the result of systematic torture designed to break their spirits and make them unpredictable. Marcus took his place in the VIP section and raised his hand for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we have something special. This woman thought she could interfere with our operations. She will now face the consequences in our arena against some of the most dangerous predators on Earth." The crowd cheered and raised their drinks in anticipation. Maya was pushed toward a gate that led directly into the sandy arena floor. Her bonds were cut, giving her the illusion of freedom while making the spectacle more interesting for the viewers. She rubbed her wrists to restore circulation while quickly scanning the arena for anything that might help her survive the next few minutes. "Release the dogs," Marcus commanded with theatrical flair. The crowd fell silent in anticipation as gates began to open around the arena perimeter. Maya steadied herself and reached out with her mind, trying to make contact with whatever animals were about to be released. She could feel their approach before she could see them, sensing their pain and rage like waves of heat radiating toward her. What emerged from the gates made several spectators gasp in shock. These were not ordinary fighting dogs, but a pack of 12 massive wolves that had been captured from the wild and subjected to months of abuse. Their ribs showed clearly through their fur, evidence of deliberate starvation. Their eyes held the desperate wildness of creatures pushed far beyond their natural limits. Maya stood perfectly still in the center of the arena as the wolves spread out in a circle around her. The crowd held its breath, expecting to witness her immediate destruction. Marcus leaned forward with anticipation, already savoring his revenge against the woman who had dared to threaten his empire. But something unexpected began to happen. Instead of attacking immediately, the wolves stopped their advance and began to watch Maya with intense curiosity. She had dropped to one knee and was making low, rhythmic sounds that seemed to resonate with something deep in their consciousness. Her posture was submissive but confident, the stance of someone who understood their language and meant them no harm. The largest wolf, a massive gray male with scars across his muzzle, approached her slowly. Maya remained motionless, continuing her soft vocalizations while projecting feelings of peace and understanding through whatever mysterious channel allowed her to communicate with animals. She could sense the confusion in the wolf's mind as it struggled between its conditioned aggression and its natural instincts responding to her presence. "What is she doing?" Someone in the crowd whispered loudly enough for others to hear. Marcus was leaning forward now, his confidence beginning to waver as he watched the wolves respond to Maya in a way that made no sense according to everything he knew about animal behavior. These creatures had been trained to kill anything placed in the arena with them. They had torn apart previous victims without hesitation. Yet now they seemed almost hypnotized by the small woman kneeling among them. Maya slowly extended her hand toward the lead wolf, palm down in a gesture of respect rather than dominance. The animal sniffed her fingers carefully, then surprised everyone by lowering his head and allowing her to touch his scarred muzzle. The other wolves watched this interaction with growing calm, their aggressive postures relaxing as they sensed their leader's acceptance of this strange human. The arena fell into stunned silence as Maya rose slowly to her feet, the massive wolf remaining at her side like a loyal guardian. She could feel the confusion and growing unease rippling through the crowd of spectators who had paid enormous sums to witness her brutal death. Instead, they were watching something that challenged everything they thought they understood about predator behavior. Marcus Blackwood's face had turned red with rage and bewilderment. He grabbed the microphone from his assistant and shouted into the arena, "Kill her! What are you waiting for? Attack!" His voice echoed off the concrete walls, but the wolves showed no response to his commands. They had formed a protective circle around Maya, their attention focused entirely on her gentle movements and soft vocalizations. Maya continued to project feelings of calm and safety while carefully studying the compound around her. She could sense many more animals in the holding areas: tigers, leopards, bears, and various other creatures that had been captured for this twisted entertainment. All of them were suffering from neglect, abuse, and the psychological trauma of forced captivity. Their pain called out to her like voices crying for help. Through her connection with the lead wolf, she began to understand the full scope of what had happened here. Images flashed through her mind showing the systematic torture these animals had endured. They had been beaten, starved, and subjected to electric shocks to make them aggressive. Many had watched other animals die in this very arena. The psychological damage was so severe that most had lost touch with their natural behaviors entirely. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Gerald Hoffman, a wealthy German industrialist who had flown in specifically to watch Maya's execution. Those animals were trained killers. They destroyed a man just last week without hesitation. But Maya was already moving beyond simply calming the wolves. She was beginning to heal them. Her grandmother had taught her that their family's gift went beyond communication. They could actually help restore an animal's natural emotional balance by sharing their own strength and peace. It was exhausting work that required tremendous focus, but Maya knew these creatures deserved the chance to remember who they really were beneath their trauma. One by one, she made eye contact with each wolf in the pack. She felt their memories of running free in mountain forests before humans had trapped them and stolen their freedom. She sensed their longing for the companionship of their original pack members, most of whom had been killed during capture. Slowly, carefully, she began to awaken their true nature while suppressing the artificial aggression that had been beaten into them. Marcus was frantically signaling to his security team around the arena. "Shoot her. Shoot them all. This has gone on long enough." But his men hesitated, unsure how to handle a situation they had never encountered before. The wolves were not attacking, but they were clearly protecting the woman in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Maya heard the security guards loading their weapons and knew she had very little time. She reached out with her mind toward the holding areas where the other animals were kept. If she was going to die here, she would at least try to free as many creatures as possible before Marcus could continue his brutal business. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tigers began roaring in their cages, not with rage, but with a sound Maya recognized as joy and hope. Bears that had been lying listlessly on concrete floors suddenly came alive, pressing against their cage doors. Leopards that had been pacing endlessly in their small enclosures stopped and turned their attention toward the arena as if hearing a voice they had long forgotten. "Something is happening in the compound," one of Marcus's men reported through his radio. "All the animals are going crazy. They are acting like they want to get out, but not in an aggressive way. It is like they are trying to get closer to something." Maya smiled despite her dangerous situation. She was making contact with creatures throughout the facility, awakening memories of their natural lives and helping them remember what freedom felt like. The connection was draining her energy rapidly, but she pressed on, knowing this might be their only chance for escape. The lead wolf suddenly lifted his head and howled, a sound completely different from the aggressive growls the spectators had expected to hear. It was a wild, mournful call that spoke of mountains and forests and the ancient bond between his kind and the earth itself. The other wolves joined in, creating a chorus that made several people in the crowd shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Shut them up," Marcus screamed, but his voice was nearly drowned out by the howling that was now being answered by roars, trumpeting calls, and other vocalizations from animals throughout the compound. Maya had awakened something primal in all of them, the memory of what they had been before humans had broken their spirits. Through her connection with the wolves, Maya sensed approaching danger from multiple directions. Marcus had finally overcome his shock and was organizing his security team for a coordinated attack. But she also sensed something else. Several of the cage mechanisms in the holding areas were old and poorly maintained. The animals' sudden activity was putting stress on locks and barriers that had not been designed to contain creatures with renewed hope and determination. Maya made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to maintain the peaceful standoff in the arena, she began to project different emotions toward the animals throughout the facility. Not aggression toward living beings, but focused determination to break free from their captivity. She showed them mental images of their cage doors, encouraging them to test the barriers that had held them prisoner for so long. The first cage to fail contained a massive Siberian tiger named Khan, who had been captured as a cub and raised in captivity for 5 years. As Maya's influence awakened his natural strength and intelligence, he realized that the lock on his enclosure could be broken with focused effort. His powerful shoulders bunched as he threw his weight against the door, and, after 3 attempts, the mechanism gave way with a metallic crash that echoed throughout the compound. "Sir, we have a problem," the security chief reported urgently. "Tiger loose in Section C. The animal is not acting aggressive, but it is definitely free." Marcus grabbed the radio himself. "Then shoot it. What do I pay you people for?" But Khan was not the only animal testing his boundaries. Throughout the compound, creatures that had been broken and defeated for years were rediscovering their strength under Maya's guidance. A family of leopards began working together to dig under a fence that had been poorly installed. A pair of black bears figured out how to manipulate the simple lever mechanism that secured their enclosure. Even smaller animals, foxes, wolves, and various cats, began finding weaknesses in their containment systems. Maya felt each successful escape like a small victory, but the effort was taking a tremendous toll on her body and mind. Maintaining connections with so many animals while helping them overcome years of psychological conditioning required more energy than she had ever expended before. She could feel herself beginning to weaken, but the wolves around her seemed to sense her exhaustion and moved closer, as if offering their own strength to support her efforts. "This is insane," breathed Catherine Morrison, a wealthy socialite from New York who had come to the event as entertainment after a charity gala. "Those animals are behaving like they are following orders from that woman. How is this possible?" The question was on everyone's mind as they watched Maya continue her impossible work. She stood in the center of the arena surrounded by wolves that should have killed her minutes ago, while throughout the facility, other predators were systematically breaking free from their prisons. It defied everything they thought they knew about animal behavior, human limitations, and the natural order of the world. The sound of splintering wood and twisting metal echoed from multiple directions as more animals broke free from their enclosures. Maya could sense their growing confidence as they realized that escape was actually possible. Through her mental connection, she guided them away from areas where Marcus's security teams were positioned, helping them find safe paths through the compound while avoiding unnecessary confrontation with humans. Marcus was now screaming orders into multiple radios while his carefully orchestrated event collapsed around him. "Lock down all exits. Get the tranquilizer guns. And somebody kill that woman before this gets any worse." His face had turned purple with rage as he watched his multi-million-dollar operation falling apart because of one small veterinarian who seemed to possess impossible abilities. The crowd of wealthy spectators was no longer sitting in comfortable anticipation of entertainment. Many had risen from their seats and were looking nervously toward the exits as the sounds of escaping animals grew louder. The reality was beginning to sink in that they were no longer safe observers, but potential targets if the situation spiraled completely out of control. Maya felt a new presence approaching the arena and turned to see Khan, the massive Siberian tiger, padding silently through one of the side entrances. His orange and black coat was scarred from years of abuse, but his eyes held an intelligence and dignity that captivity had never been able to destroy completely. The crowd gasped, and several people screamed as the 400-pound predator entered the arena. But Khan did not attack the spectators or even acknowledge their presence. Instead, he walked directly to Maya and the wolf pack, lowering his great head in a gesture of respect that made even the security guards hesitate to shoot. Maya reached out and touched his massive skull, feeling the deep gratitude emanating from his mind as he experienced freedom for the first time in years. "Impossible," whispered Dr. James Crawford, a zoologist from London who had come to study predator behavior. "Tigers are solitary animals. They do not form social bonds with wolf packs or show submission to humans they do not know. This violates every principle of animal psychology." Through Khan's memories, Maya gained access to information about the entire facility that she had not possessed before. The tiger had been moved through every section of the compound during his captivity and knew the locations of all the other animals, the security systems, and the escape routes that Marcus's men used when moving dangerous creatures. This knowledge flowed through their connection, giving Maya a complete map of the facility and its weaknesses. She realized that this was her chance to not only free the animals, but to expose Marcus's operation to the world. Hidden throughout the compound were the very documents and evidence she had been seeking before her capture: records of illegal animal trafficking, financial transactions with international crime syndicates, and video footage of the brutal fights that would convince any court of the extent of his crimes. Maya began to project new instructions to the animals throughout the facility. Instead of simply escaping into the wilderness where they might be recaptured or killed, she guided them towards specific objectives that would help bring down the entire organization. Some of the more intelligent animals were directed toward the security office where the main computer systems were located. Others were sent to destroy the vehicles that Marcus's men would need to pursue escaped animals or flee with evidence. The first major breakthrough came when a family of leopards, working together under Maya's guidance, managed to break into the main electrical control room. These cats had retained their natural intelligence despite years of captivity, and Maya was able to show them exactly which circuits to damage to disable the electronic locks throughout the facility while leaving the lighting systems intact. The lights went out in sections throughout the compound as the leopards methodically destroyed the control systems. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow that made the escaping animals look even more intimidating to the panicking spectators. More importantly, the electronic locks on dozens of remaining cages failed simultaneously, releasing animals that had been trapped in the most secure sections of the facility. "Sir, we are losing control of the entire compound," the security chief reported desperately. "The animals are not acting randomly. They seem to be working together with specific goals. They are targeting our equipment and avoiding our personnel unless directly threatened. I have never seen anything like this in 20 years of security work." Marcus grabbed a rifle from one of his guards and began striding toward the arena himself. "If you people cannot handle one woman and a bunch of stupid animals, then I will take care of this personally." But as he approached the arena entrance, he found his path blocked by Khan, who had positioned himself strategically to protect Maya while she continued her mental coordination of the liberation efforts. The standoff between Marcus and the massive tiger created a moment of frozen tension that was broken by the arrival of more freed animals. Two brown bears emerged from the compound's interior, followed by a pack of wolves different from those already surrounding Maya. These were animals from other sections of the facility who had broken free and were converging on the arena in response to her mental calls for unity. Maya felt her strength beginning to fail as the effort of maintaining connections with so many animals simultaneously pushed her abilities to their absolute limits. Her grandmother had warned her that overusing their family's gift could be dangerous, potentially causing permanent mental damage or even death. But she could sense that they were close to achieving something unprecedented: the complete liberation of every animal in the facility and the exposure of Marcus's crimes to the world. Through the wolf pack's enhanced senses, she detected the approach of vehicles outside the compound walls. Her heart leaped with hope as she realized these were not more of Marcus's associates, but law enforcement vehicles responding to reports of explosions and animal escapes in the area. Someone had called the authorities, probably neighbors who had heard the unusual sounds and seen the lights going out in sections of the estate. Maya made contact with a clever raven that had been kept in a small cage near the main office building. Ravens were among the most intelligent birds in the world, capable of solving complex problems and even using tools. Under her guidance, this bird flew to the office windows and began tapping in specific patterns on the glass, not randomly, but in the international Morse code signal for SOS that Maya projected into its mind. The raven's distress signal was spotted by the lead police officer approaching the compound, Detective Sarah Chun, who had extensive experience with wildlife crimes. She immediately recognized that the bird's behavior was too organized to be natural and called for additional backup units specializing in exotic animal situations. "This is Detective Chun requesting immediate support from Animal Control and the Wildlife Protection Agency," she radioed to headquarters. "We have reports of multiple large predators loose at the Blackwood estate, but their behavior appears to be organized rather than random. Possible illegal animal fighting operation in progress." Inside the arena, Maya sensed the approaching help but knew that Marcus would try to destroy evidence and kill both her and the animals before the authorities could reach them. She had to keep the situation under control for just a few more minutes, but her mental strength was nearly exhausted from coordinating the actions of so many creatures simultaneously. The wolves around her seemed to sense her weakness and moved even closer, forming a tighter protective circle. Khan positioned himself between Maya and the arena entrance where Marcus was still trying to get a clear shot with his rifle. Other animals that had freed themselves began converging on the arena as well, creating an unprecedented gathering of different species united by their shared connection to the small woman who had awakened their hope for freedom. Marcus finally lost all patience and began shouting at his security team. "Rush them all at once. I do not care how many animals you have to kill. That woman cannot control all of them if we attack from multiple directions. But even as he gave these orders, he could see the uncertainty in his men's faces. They were trained to deal with human threats and individual dangerous animals, not coordinated groups of intelligent predators working together with apparent strategic purpose. The sound of approaching sirens could now be heard clearly over the chaos within the compound, causing panic among the wealthy spectators who had come to watch Maya's death as entertainment. Many began pushing toward the exits, desperate to escape before law enforcement could identify them as participants in illegal activities. Their expensive suits and jewelry made a sharp contrast to their undignified scramble for safety. Detective Chun and her team had reached the outer gates of the estate, where they encountered several security guards trying to prevent their entry. "This is private property," one guard insisted nervously. "There has been a small incident with some exotic pets, but everything is under control now." But the detective could hear the sounds of multiple large animals calling to each other from within the compound, along with human voices shouting in panic. Her experience told her that this was far more than a simple incident with escaped pets. "We have reports of people in danger and possible wildlife trafficking operations," she stated firmly. "Stand aside or face obstruction charges." Inside the arena, Maya felt her connection with the animals beginning to fluctuate as her mental energy approached complete exhaustion. She knew she could not maintain control much longer, but she also sensed that the animals themselves were beginning to act with independent purpose rather than simply following her guidance. The liberation process had awakened their natural intelligence and social bonds, creating a momentum that might continue even without her direct involvement. Khan lifted his massive head and roared, not the desperate sound of a caged animal, but the powerful call of a wild predator asserting his dominance over territory. The sound echoed off the arena walls and was answered by roars, howls, and calls from animals throughout the compound. To the terrified spectators, it sounded like the voice of the wilderness itself rising up against those who had tried to enslave it. Marcus finally managed to push past Khan and enter the arena with his rifle raised, but he found himself facing not just Maya and the wolves, but a gathering of predators unlike anything seen outside of nature documentaries. Bears, big cats, wolves, and other creatures had formed a loose circle around the arena, not attacking but clearly prepared to defend the woman who had given them back their freedom. "You think you have won something here?" Marcus shouted at Maya, though his voice shook with fear and rage. "These animals are still just property. When the authorities arrive, they will be destroyed as dangerous escapees, and you will be charged with terrorism for releasing them." Maya looked up at him with calm determination despite her physical exhaustion. "They are not your property anymore," she said quietly. "They remember what they really are now, and that memory cannot be taken away again." As if responding to her words, Khan stepped forward and placed himself directly between Marcus and Maya. The tiger's golden eyes held an intelligence and dignity that made even Marcus pause in his threats. This was no longer the broken creature that had been beaten into submission for years of captivity. This was a wild predator who had reclaimed his identity and would not be enslaved again. Detective Chun and her team finally breached the compound's outer defenses and began moving toward the sounds of activity near the main arena. What they found defied their expectations completely. Instead of chaotic animal attacks and human victims, they discovered an organized gathering of different species that seemed to be protecting a single human woman from armed men. "Control, we need immediate backup from wildlife specialists," Detective Chen radioed. "We have approximately 30 large predators in a coordinated group formation. They are not attacking humans, but appear to be in a defensive posture. I have never seen behavior like this in the field." The arriving officers could see Marcus and several of his security team at one end of the arena, clearly armed and threatening the woman surrounded by animals. But they also noticed that none of the creatures were showing typical aggressive behaviors. Their body language suggested alertness and protectiveness rather than predatory intent. Maya sensed the confusion among the law enforcement officers and knew she needed to help them understand the situation before someone started shooting. Through her remaining mental connection with the animals, She projected feelings of calm and cooperation, encouraging them to demonstrate that they posed no threat to the authorities. One by one, the predators began to settle into resting positions while maintaining their protective formation. The wolves lay down with their heads raised and alert, but clearly not preparing to attack. Khan remained standing but lowered his head in a gesture that experienced wildlife officers recognized as submission to authority rather than challenge. Nobody moved. Detective Chun called out as she and her team entered the arena with weapons drawn but pointed downward. We need to assess the situation before anyone gets hurt. But Marcus was not interested in peaceful resolution. Realizing that the arrival of law enforcement meant the end of his operation and likely imprisonment, he decided to eliminate the primary witness to his crimes. He raised his rifle and aimed directly at Maya, determined to kill her even if it meant triggering a coordinated animal attack that would eliminate evidence of his illegal activities. The shot never came. As Marcus pulled the trigger, Khan launched himself through the air in a leap that covered 20 feet in less than 2 seconds. The massive tiger knocked Marcus to the ground and pinned him there with one enormous paw, but notably did not injure him beyond the impact. Instead, Khan simply held him immobile while looking toward the law enforcement officers as if asking what should be done next. "Do not shoot the tiger," Detective Chen commanded her team as several officers raised their weapons. "The animal is restraining a suspect, not attacking randomly. This is the most controlled situation involving large predators that I have ever witnessed." Maya struggled to her feet, supported by 2 of the wolves who seemed to sense her weakness. "Detective," she called out in a voice hoarse from exhaustion, "my name is Dr. Maya Singh. I am a veterinarian who has been investigating illegal wildlife trafficking operations. Marcus Blackwood kidnapped me 3 days ago to prevent me from exposing his animal fighting business." As she spoke, Maya gestured toward the compound around them. "All of these animals have been illegally captured and subjected to abuse to make them aggressive for fighting entertainment. The evidence you need is in the office building, financial records, shipping documents, and video footage of previous fights." Detective Chen studied the unprecedented scene before making her decision. "Dr. Singh, are you able to maintain control over these animals while we secure the scene and gather evidence?" Maya shook her head honestly. "I cannot control them, Detective. But I do not need to anymore. They are acting on their own intelligence now, not my influence. They understand that you are here to help them, not hurt them." As if to demonstrate the truth of her words, several of the animals began moving away from the arena on their own initiative. But instead of fleeing randomly into the wilderness, they moved toward specific areas of the compound where evidence of Marcus's crimes was located. Under Maya's earlier guidance, they had learned the layout of the facility and were now leading the authorities to exactly the information needed to prosecute the entire operation. A family of leopards padded toward the office building where financial records were stored. 2 bears lumbered toward a storage facility where confiscated animal parts and illegal weapons were hidden. Even smaller animals like foxes and ravens began moving toward locations where additional evidence could be found, acting as guides for the investigating officers. "This is impossible," muttered Officer Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who had responded to countless animal incidents. "They are behaving like trained search animals, but there is no way they could have been trained for this specific situation." Maya smiled despite her exhaustion as she watched the animals taking charge of their own liberation. "They do not need training, officer. They just needed to remember that they are intelligent beings capable of making their own choices. What you are seeing is their natural intelligence freed from the trauma that had suppressed it." Marcus, still pinned beneath Khan's massive paw, shouted desperately at the approaching officers. "She is a witch. Some kind of animal psychic. You cannot trust anything she says. These animals should be destroyed immediately as public safety threats." But Detective Chun was already seeing evidence that supported Maya's claims rather than Marcus's protests. The animals' behavior was too organized and purposeful to be explained by random aggression or escape instincts. More importantly, several of them were actively helping the investigation by pointing out hidden areas and guarding important evidence from potential destruction. Within hours of the raid, the Blackwood estate had become the center of the largest wildlife trafficking investigation in the region's history. The evidence led by the animals themselves revealed connections to international crime syndicates operating across 3 continents. Financial records showed millions of dollars in illegal transactions, while video footage documented not only the animal fighting operations but also the participation of wealthy clients from around the world. Maya spent 2 days in the hospital recovering from exhaustion and the injuries she had sustained during her captivity. During this time, wildlife specialists worked around the clock to assess the rescued animals and determine which ones could be safely returned to their natural habitats. Remarkably, despite years of abuse, most of the creatures showed signs of psychological recovery that experts had never seen before in rescued wildlife. Dr. Patricia Williams, the lead wildlife rehabilitation specialist brought in to evaluate the animals, was amazed by what she observed. In 30 years of working with traumatized wildlife, I have never seen animals recover their natural behaviors so quickly, she told reporters. Normally, predators that have been subjected to this level of abuse require months or years of careful rehabilitation before they can be considered for release. These animals are showing normal social patterns and hunting instincts within days of their rescue. The explanation, though few people fully understood it, lay in Maya's unique ability to help heal psychological trauma in animals. By awakening their memories of natural behavior and helping them overcome the conditioning that had been forced upon them, she had accomplished in hours what conventional rehabilitation might take years to achieve. Khan, the massive Siberian tiger who had protected Maya during the raid, became something of a celebrity as news of the rescue spread worldwide. Video footage of him restraining Marcus Blackwood without harming him was viewed by millions of people and led to discussions about animal intelligence that had never before reached mainstream media. Wildlife experts were forced to reconsider their understanding of how quickly animals could recover from trauma and adapt to new situations. Marcus Blackwood and 17 of his associates were arrested and charged with multiple crimes including illegal wildlife trafficking, animal cruelty, kidnapping, and operating illegal gambling enterprises. The evidence gathered with the animals' help was so comprehensive that prosecutors called it the strongest case against wildlife trafficking they had ever assembled. Several of the wealthy spectators who had been present during Maya's intended execution were also identified and faced charges in their home countries. Maya herself became reluctantly famous as news outlets struggled to explain what had happened at the Blackwood estate. She carefully avoided discussing the full extent of her abilities, instead focusing public attention on the broader issues of wildlife conservation and the illegal animal trade that continued to threaten species around the world. What happened here was not magic, she told a gathering of wildlife conservation organizations 6 months after the rescue. These animals demonstrated their natural intelligence when they were finally given the chance to do so. The real tragedy is how much damage we do to wildlife by refusing to acknowledge their capabilities and treating them as mere property for our entertainment. The rescued animals were gradually relocated to appropriate environments based on their individual needs and recovery progress. Khan was eventually transported to a large wildlife preserve in Russia, where he could live freely among other Siberian tigers. Before his departure, he spent one final afternoon with Maya, and witnesses reported that the massive predator seemed to understand that they were saying goodbye. Many of the wolves were successfully reintroduced to wilderness areas where they could rejoin existing packs or form new ones. The bears were relocated to protected forests, while the leopards and smaller predators found homes in carefully selected wildlife reserves. The success rate of these relocations was unprecedented, with over 90% of the animals adapting successfully to their new environments. The case led to significant changes in international wildlife protection laws and enforcement procedures. The evidence of wealthy individuals traveling specifically to participate in illegal animal fighting created diplomatic pressure that resulted in new extradition treaties and cooperative enforcement agreements between countries. Several international crime organizations that had been operating for decades were dismantled as a result of information discovered at the Blackwood estate. Maya returned to her veterinary practice in Mumbai, but her work took on new dimensions as word spread about her extraordinary success with traumatized animals. Wildlife organizations from around the world began consulting with her about cases involving animals rescued from illegal trafficking operations. She carefully managed these requests, sharing techniques that could be taught to others while protecting the secret of her unique abilities. 3 years after the Blackwood rescue, Maya received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph taken by a wildlife photographer in the Russian wilderness, showing Khan leading a small pride of tigers through deep forest snow. The magnificent predator looked healthy and confident, fully restored to his natural role as an apex predator living free in his ancestral territory. Attached to the photograph was a simple note. Some gifts are too important to keep hidden forever. The world needs to understand that the connection between humans and animals can heal rather than harm. Your grandmother would be proud. Maya never discovered who had sent the photograph, but she kept it on her desk as a reminder of what was possible when humans chose to heal rather than exploit the natural world. The animals she had helped rescue that day had not only found freedom for themselves, they had become symbols of hope for countless other creatures still trapped by human cruelty and greed. The Blackwood case became a turning point in global wildlife protection efforts, proving that with proper intervention and understanding, even the most severely traumatized animals could recover their natural behaviors and return to healthy lives in appropriate environments. It also demonstrated that the connection between humans and animals could be a force for healing and protection rather than domination and exploitation. Maya continued her work with animals throughout her life, always careful to protect the secret of her family's unique gift while using it to help creatures that others had given up as lost causes. She never again faced a situation as dangerous as the Blackwood estate, but she never forgot the lesson that day had taught her about the incredible resilience of life when given the chance to heal and grow. The animals she had helped rescue scattered across the globe to live free lives in their natural environments. But the memory of their liberation remained as proof that even the darkest situations could be transformed when courage, compassion, and understanding came together to fight against cruelty and injustice. Their story became a beacon of hope for everyone working to protect wildlife and preserve the natural world for future generations. Years later, when young veterinarians asked Maya about the secret to her success with difficult animals, she would smile and share the wisdom her grandmother had taught her. Every creature has a voice, and most of them are simply waiting for someone to listen with their heart instead of just their ears.